It's Tuesday morning and you pull up to the gas station, same pump, same routine, but the number on the sign looks wrong. $3.11. It was $2.90 something yesterday. You swipe your card and watch the total climb past $50, then $60. And you're thinking about something you saw over the weekend. Explosions in Tehran, something about a strait you've never heard of, and now it's on your receipt. This is just day 3. My name is Finn, and I've been crunching these numbers so you don't have to. If you're the kind of person who actually wants to understand how money works, instead of just guessing, hit subscribe and drop a like on this video. It helps more than you'd think. Now here's the thing. Most people are watching the news right now and thinking this war in Iran is something that happens over there. Missiles and military briefings and maps of the Middle East. And sure, that's part of it. But here's what nobody's telling you. This conflict has already started reaching into your pocket, and it's going to keep reaching for weeks, maybe months. Your gas bill, your grocery bill, your 401k, your mortgage rate, the cost of heating your home, shipping a package, flying anywhere this spring. All of it is connected to what happened last Saturday. And the crazy part is, the biggest financial damage isn't coming from the bombs. It's coming from a narrow strip of water most Americans can't even point to on a map. A choke point that controls 20% of the world's entire oil supply. That's where this story really starts. Let me set the stage for you. On Saturday, February 28th, the United States and Israel launched a joint attack on Iran, an operation the White House is calling Operation Epic Fury. Within hours, Iran confirmed that its supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was killed in the strikes. Several top-ranking officials were also killed. The U.S. reportedly sank 9 Iranian Navy ships and largely destroyed Iran's naval headquarters. Now here's where it gets personal for every single American. Iran sits on the northern edge of something called the Strait of Hormuz. Think of it as a bottleneck, a narrow channel of water between Iran and Oman. And through that bottleneck flows roughly 13 million barrels of crude oil every single day. That's about 20% of all seaborne crude oil on the planet. 1/5 through one little strip of water. And right now, that water is essentially frozen. Not literally frozen, but tanker traffic has ground to a halt. Shipping companies are pulling their vessels. Insurance companies are canceling war risk policies for the area. Iran has fired on ships. Maersk, one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, suspended all vessel crossings through the strait. Here's a number that should make you uncomfortable. The United States alone consumes roughly 370 million gallons of gasoline every single day, and the supply chain that delivers that gasoline just got a major kink in it. The average American household spends about $1,249 a year on gas, roughly $204 a month. That's 3.2% of total household spending, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. For lower-income families, it's closer to 5%, and those numbers were calculated before last Saturday. Everything I'm about to walk you through in this video connects back to that one choke point. Because when oil gets disrupted, it doesn't just make gas expensive. It makes everything expensive. Let's start with the thing you'll feel first and fastest, the price at the pump. On Monday, the national average for a gallon of regular gasoline hit $3.11, according to AAA. That's an 11-cent jump overnight, the biggest single-day increase since March 4th, 2022. Remember what was happening in March 2022? Russia had just invaded Ukraine. That spike eventually pushed gas to an all-time record of $5.02 per gallon by June of that year. Now we're not there yet, but here's the math that should worry you. Oil analysts at GasBuddy are projecting the national average could reach $3.25 to $3.50 per gallon within the next few weeks. Patrick DeHaan, GasBuddy's head of petroleum analysis, said some individual stations could see prices rise by as much as 85 cents per gallon. And Brent crude, the global benchmark for oil prices, surged nearly 9% on Monday, its highest level in over 8 months. Think of it this way. Your gas tank is like a thermometer for global chaos. Every time something happens halfway around the world, the temperature in your tank goes up. Let me put that in perspective for you. Mark Zandi, the chief economist at Moody's, did a calculation on Monday that every sustained 1-cent increase in the price of a gallon of gasoline costs Americans an additional $1.4 billion per year. 1 cent across the country. That's what 1 penny does. Now multiply that by 30 cents, the low end of what analysts are projecting. That's $42 billion pulled out of American consumers' pockets annually. Gone. Evaporated. Because of a strait most people learned about 3 days ago. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. It's the single mom in Oklahoma who has to choose between filling the tank and buying groceries. It's the delivery driver in Houston whose entire margin just got squeezed. It's the retiree on a fixed income in Arizona who cancels the road trip they'd been planning since Christmas. And we're only on domino number 1. Stay with me here because this next part changes everything. When oil prices go up, it's not just your gas that gets more expensive. It's the diesel that powers the 18-wheelers that deliver your groceries. It's the jet fuel that flies your Amazon package across the country. It's the fuel that runs the tractors on the farms. It's the natural gas that heats the greenhouses that grow your tomatoes in February. Look, here's a number that blew my mind when I found it. The American Trucking Association estimates that trucks move roughly 72% of all freight in this country by weight. 72%. And those trucks run on diesel. Diesel spiked right alongside crude oil on Monday. According to the Department of Energy, every 10% increase in diesel prices adds roughly 2 to 4 cents per item on grocery store shelves within weeks, and more over time. That doesn't sound like a lot until you realize the average American household buys over 300 items a month. And there's a timing problem that makes this worse. The spring planting season in America is about to begin. Farmers are about to make their biggest fuel purchases of the year. If diesel stays elevated through March and April, the cost of growing food goes up before a single seed hits the soil, and that cost doesn't stay on the farm. It gets passed right through to the shelf at your local Walmart and Kroger. Americans are already spending about $412 a month on groceries. The Consumer Confidence Survey consistently shows that food prices are Americans' #1 concern, even ahead of gas. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. It's the family in Michigan doing mental math in the cereal aisle, putting 1 box back because the total is getting too high. It's the college student in Georgia switching from chicken to rice and beans for the 3rd week in a row. It's the couple in their 60s watching their fixed food budget buy less and less every single month, and it's not just groceries. Airlines are already feeling it. Jet fuel is one of their biggest costs, and when oil surges, airlines respond with fuel surcharges. That spring break trip you booked? Don't be surprised if your airline adds $50 to $100 in fees before you board. Now here's the part most people skip over. This isn't just about higher prices today. When companies raise prices in response to supply shocks, they rarely bring them all the way back down when the shock ends. Economists call this sticky inflation. Think of it like toothpaste. Once it's out of the tube, good luck getting it back in. If you're still here, you're already ahead of 90% of people who clicked on this video. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to show this to more people who need to see it. Okay, but honestly, here's what nobody's telling you about the stock market. On Tuesday, S&P 500 futures dropped 1.62%. The Dow fell nearly 800 points. The Nasdaq was down over 2%. Defense stocks like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman shot up. Oil companies like Exxon and Chevron surged, but everything else, red. Now, if you're someone who has a 401k and the average American has about $148,000 saved, according to Vanguard, here's the math. A 2% drop on $148,000 is roughly $2,260, gone in a single day. That's not pocket change. But before you panic, let me give you the bigger picture. Carson Group compiled data on 40 major geopolitical events over the past 85 years, everything from Germany invading France to the Iraq War to Iran attacking Israel last year. On average, the S&P 500 lost 0.9% in the first month after the event, but gained 3.4% over the 6 months that followed. Think about this for a second. The stock market is like a dog on a leash. The dog freaks out. It barks, it lunges, it goes crazy every time it sees something new. But the person holding the leash, the fundamentals, the earnings, the economy, keeps walking forward. The dog always comes back to where the leash leads. The real risk isn't the initial drop. The real risk is what happens if this war drags on. Goldman Sachs' head of oil research said the market is currently pricing in about 4 weeks of disruption. If it's 4 weeks, the market recovers. If it becomes 4 months, that's a different story entirely, and this is where it gets wild. Just last week, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate dropped below 6% for the first time in 3.5 years. Freddie Mac reported an average of 5.98%. It was a moment. The housing market was finally starting to breathe again. Purchase applications were up 12% compared to a year ago. And then Saturday happened. Here's the chain reaction. War creates uncertainty. Uncertainty pushes investors toward safe haven assets like U.S. Treasury bonds. Normally, that would push bond yields down and mortgage rates would follow. But here's the catch. If oil prices stay high, inflation goes back up. And if inflation goes back up, the Federal Reserve can't cut interest rates. The Fed is already stuck. They held rates at 3.50 to 3.75% in January. The committee is divided. 2 governors actually voted for a cut. But now, with oil surging and gas prices jumping, the inflation hawks on the committee just got a lot more ammunition to say, wait. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. Like, let's say you're looking at a $400,000 house. At 5.98%, your monthly mortgage payment is about $2,395. If rates creep back up to 6.5% because of war-driven inflation, that same house now costs you $2,528 a month. That's an extra $133 every single month. An extra $2,596 a year. An extra $47,880 over the life of a 30-year loan. Because of a war. That's not a rounding error, that's a used car. Now, before you scroll away, this is the part that actually matters. Everything I've described so far, gas, groceries, your 401k, your mortgage, those are the obvious dominoes. But there's a fifth one that nobody talks about. And look, it might be the most expensive of all. It's called the confidence tax. When gas prices go up, Americans don't just spend more on gas, they spend less on everything else. Consumer sentiment drops. People stop buying the new couch. They postpone the vacation. They hold off on the new car. They eat out less. They tighten. And when 330 million people tighten at the same time, the economy slows down. Mark Zandi from Moody's put it bluntly. Higher gasoline prices have an outsized impact because they hurt consumer sentiment. That affects people's ability and willingness to spend, and that weighs on the entire economy. And this is the part that should make you a little angry, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. The American economy was already wobbling. GDP growth in the fourth quarter of 2025 came in at just 1.4%, down from 4.4% the previous quarter. And here's the data point that should really shock you. After revisions, 2025 turned out to be one of the worst years for job creation since 1945, outside of a recession. Payrolls were revised down by 862,000 jobs. Federal Reserve Governor Waller said it's clear that payroll employment in the United States probably fell in 2025. Let that sink in. So the economy was already running on fumes. And now we just poured sand in the gas tank. Now here's where the math starts working in your favor, or against you, depending on what you do next. Okay, so here's what you actually do about all of this. I spent the last week talking to the numbers, reading the research, and mapping out the scenarios. And honestly, most of the advice you'll hear this week is going to be the same recycled stuff. Don't panic, stay the course, diversify. And look, that's not wrong, but it's not enough. So here's a more specific framework. Move number 1, don't sell, but do rebalance. I know your 401k dipped. I know the red numbers on your screen make your stomach flip, but remember, in 40 major geopolitical events over 85 years, the average S&P 500 recovery took less than 6 months. The dog always comes back to the leash. However, and this is the part most people skip, if you haven't rebalanced your portfolio in over a year, now is the time. If you're overweight in tech and underweight in energy and defense, this conflict just exposed a gap in your allocation. You don't need to make dramatic moves, but log into your 401k this week and check your sector exposure. 5 minutes could save you thousands. Move number 2. If you're house hunting, run the stress test. Rates are still near 3-year lows at 5.98%. That window might close fast if inflation ticks back up and the Fed holds rates longer. But don't rush into a bad deal just because rates are low today. Here's exactly what to do. Run your monthly payment at both 5.98% and 6.5%. On a $400,000 loan, that's the difference between $2,395 and $2,528 a month. If you can afford the higher number, you're safe. Lock the rate now. If you can only make it work at today's rate, you're one Fed decision away from trouble. That's not a house you can afford. That's a gamble. Move number 3. If you have any variable rate debt, call your lender this week. This is the one nobody's talking about. Credit cards, adjustable rate mortgages, HELOCs, variable student loans, all of these are tied to interest rates. If the war pushes inflation up and the Fed can't cut rates, or worse, has to raise them, your monthly payment on variable debt goes up automatically. You don't get a warning, it just happens. So if you have a HELOC or an ARM, call your lender and ask about locking into a fixed rate. If you're carrying credit card debt at 22 or 25%, this is your 5-alarm wake-up call to make a payoff plan, because that rate isn't coming down anytime soon. Move number 4. Build your buffer and park it smart. If you don't have at least 3 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account, and right now those are still paying over 4%, economic shocks like this are exactly why that cushion exists. But here's the move most people miss. If you already have an emergency fund, consider putting your next few paychecks worth of extra cash into a short-term treasury bill or a money market fund instead of your brokerage account. You earn a solid yield, your money stays liquid, and you're positioned to buy stocks at a discount when the dust settles, instead of buying now and watching it dip further. Move number 5. Watch the Strait, not the headlines. This is the most important thing I'll say in this entire video. Filter out the noise, the pundits predicting World War III, the panic on social media, the 24-hour news cycle designed to keep you scared. The single most important variable for your wallet right now is whether tanker traffic resumes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's it, that one waterway. If traffic resumes within the next few weeks, Goldman Sachs says oil drops back to $65 a barrel, and most of what I just described starts to reverse. If it doesn't, if Iran keeps the strait effectively closed or the war expands to Saudi infrastructure, that's when you see gas above $4, oil above $100, and a very different economic picture for the rest of 2026. So bookmark a live oil price tracker. Check Brent crude once a day. That single number will tell you more about your financial future than any cable news segment. The numbers don't lie. This conflict has a direct line to your bank account. But knowledge is your shield. Most Americans will feel the impact of this war without understanding why. You now know why, and that means you can prepare. I want to leave you with 2 versions of what the next 6 months could look like for someone just like you. Version 1. You see the gas prices go up and you shrug it off. Just a few cents, right? You don't adjust your budget. You don't check your 401k allocation. You keep waiting for that perfect mortgage rate that keeps getting pushed further away. Your grocery bill creeps up $15, $20 a month, and you barely notice because it happens slowly, like a faucet dripping. By summer, you've spent an extra $800 to $200 without realizing it. Your emergency fund, if you had one, is thinner. Your retirement account took a hit you never recovered from because you sold at the worst possible time. And when someone asks you what happened, you say the same thing everyone says. I don't know, everything just got more expensive. Version 2, same person, same income, same zip code, But you watched this video, or something like it, and you understood what was happening. You tightened your gas budget by $30 a month. You didn't panic sell your investments. You locked in a mortgage rate while it was still below 6%. You built a 3-month cash cushion in a high-yield account earning 4.3%. And when gas hit $3.50, you barely flinched because you saw it coming and you'd already adjusted. By summer, you're not just surviving the economic turbulence, you're positioned to take advantage of it, picking up stocks at a discount, refinancing at a lower rate when the dust settles, and watching your savings compound while everyone else is scrambling. The difference between those two versions isn't income, it isn't luck, it isn't where you live or what you do for a living, it's awareness. It's knowing that a Strait 6,000 miles away is connected to the receipt in your hand at the gas pump. It's understanding that war isn't just a headline, it's a line item in your budget. The math doesn't care about your excuses, but it does reward your preparation. If this video changed how you think about money, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe. The next one goes even deeper. Drop a comment and tell me, have you already felt the price increase where you live? I read every single one. My name is Finn. Stay sharp out there.